Today we're going over polynomial division. We did this in Algebra 2, so hopefully some of it comes back to you, and this is just a review. We're going to go through two different types. We're going to talk about long division, and then we're going to talk about what's called synthetic division. So right here in this box, this is just an example that's done out for you, and it talks about all the key parts. So what the quotient is, dividend, divisor, remainder, all of that stuff. So I'm going to point it out as we go through the examples, but I'm not going to talk about what's inside this, this extra resource box right here. You guys can read that on your own. All right, so number one, we have 6x cubed, minus 25x squared plus 18x plus 9, and it's being divided by x minus 3. So we call this first part the dividend. And we call the second part the divisor. So you want these to be in standard form, and you want them to be including all terms. So what does that mean by including all terms? Well, what it's saying is if you have an expression that's missing a value, such as, for example, 6x cubed plus x minus 3. This is missing the x squared value. So if this happens, which it does not on number one, I'm just giving you an example. If this happens, you would have to add in a 0 value to make sure that your standard form is complete. So you have to always double check to make sure your function or your expression is in standard form, including all terms. So in this one, we're good. When we set up our long division problem, our divisor goes outside of the division symbol and our dividend goes underneath the division symbol. So I am going to write this as x minus 3 as my divisor, and then underneath my division sign, I have 6x cubed minus 25 x squared plus 18x plus 9. To start the long division process, we need to take a look at the first term of each expression. So I'm looking at this first term of x in the divisor and this first term of 6x cubed in the dividend. I'm going to set this up as an expression. I have 6x cubed, so my dividend, divided by my first term in my divisor of x. You need to simplify this. So 6x cubed divided by x, you can eliminate a value of x in the denominator, and you can eliminate one value of x in the numerator, leaving you with 6x squared. Now, because this is 6x squared, this is going to be the first term in your quotient, and you're going to line it up with the squared value. So that means I am going to write the first term of my quotient directly above 25x squared. Now what you do is you multiply 6x squared by both terms in the divisor. 6x squared times x is 6x cubed. Notice that these two are exactly the same. That's what you want. You want that to happen every time. And then 6x times negative 3 is negative 18x squared. You are going to subtract both of these. So put parentheses around your expression and subtract all terms. 6x cubed minus 6x cubed is going to be 0. Negative 25x squared minus 18x squared is the same thing as adding, because you're subtracting a negative, which is the same thing as adding. So you end up with negative 7x squared. So make sure all terms are subtracted. All right, once we have this new value of negative 7x squared, we need to bring down our next term of positive 18x. You could bring down all of the remaining terms, but it's not necessary, so I'm just going to bring down 18x. Next, I'm going to look at the first term in my new dividend. This is my new dividend. It's what's left over. So the first term in my new dividend divided by the first term in my divisor. This is going to be the second term of my quotient. I have negative 7x squared divided by x. When I simplify this, I have negative 7x, which is the second term of my quotient. Negative 7x times x is negative 7x squared. Make sure those are the same. Negative 7x times negative 3 is positive 21x. Sorry, I'm just going to write this in black. Put this in parentheses, subtract both of these values. Your first term should always be eliminated. 18 minus positive 21x is going to leave you with negative 3x. Bring down your last term of your dividend, plus 9. You now have two new terms to divide out. This is your new dividend. The first term is negative 3x divided by the first term in your divisor, which is x. For the third and final term of the quotient, we have negative 3x divided by x, which is equal to negative 3. Multiply negative 3 times x, negative 3x. Multiply negative 3 times negative 3, that's positive 9. Put parentheses around your expression, subtract both terms. Negative 3x minus 3x is 0, and 9 minus 9 is 0. This right here would be your remainder if you had one, but we do not have one, so we don't have to worry about that. Okay, this number up here, this is called your quotient. This is your answer. So if you were to write your final answer for this division problem, which we completed using long division, we would write 6x squared minus 7x minus 3. And again, if you had a remainder, that would be slightly different, but we'll talk about that when we go over an example with a remainder. Okay, this is the same problem we just did. So here I just typed out all the steps for you, so that way I didn't have to write them every time I talked about them in the previous example. So check out the steps, make sure you follow through. That's the same problem. For number 2, we're going to start by identifying this is our dividend. And we're going to check, is it in standard form? So do we have all terms? we have an exponent of 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. So yes, it is in standard form. We do not need to alter anything. This is your divisor. Again, just double check. Make sure that you have your divisor in standard form. We have an exponent of 2, 1, 0, so we're good. When we write this out, your divisor goes outside of the symbol. X squared minus 2x plus 7. Your dividend is going to go underneath the sign. 2x to the fourth minus 4x cubed plus 13x squared plus 3x minus 11. We're going to follow the same pattern. This time our divisor is slightly larger, but it doesn't matter. We follow the same process. It actually ends up being a faster problem because of this. So we're going to look at our first two terms, and we're going to divide them out. 2x to the fourth divided by x squared is going to give you 2x squared. That's the first term in your quotient, and we're going to line it up with the squared terms. You're going to multiply this by all three terms in the divisor. 2x squared times x squared is 2x to the fourth. 2x squared times negative 2x is negative 4x cubed. 2x squared times 7 is positive 14x squared. You're going to subtract all of your terms. 2x to the fourth minus 2x to the fourth is 0. Negative 4x cubed minus negative 4x cubed is the same as adding, so that's also going to be 0. And 13x squared minus 14x squared is going to leave you with negative x squared. Because our divisor is 3 terms, we need to make sure our dividend always has 3 terms. So we need to bring down the next 2 terms, which is positive 3x and minus 11. We now have a new first term in what we call the dividend. The first term is negative x squared, and we're dividing this by the first term of the divisor, which is x squared. Negative x squared divided by x squared is 1, and this is the next value. It's negative 1. It's the next value in your quotient. You're going to multiply negative 1 by all terms in the divisor. Negative 1 times x squared is negative x squared. Negative 1 times negative 2x is positive 2x. And negative 1 times 7 is negative 7. Subtract all values. Negative x squared plus x squared is 0. 3x minus 2x is x. And negative 11 minus negative 7 is negative 4. Now we don't have any more terms in our dividend to bring down, so this here is going to be called our remainder. And don't forget, what you have at the top is called your quotient. When you write your final answer for a problem that does have a remainder, like this one, you're going to write your final answer as your quotient, 2x squared minus 1, plus your remainder of x minus 4 divided by your divisor, whatever your divisor is. So our divisor is x squared minus 2x plus 7. And this is how you write that final answer. So this here is that same problem, and you can see how they write the answer. So just to give you a little background, you're always going to write the quotient. plus the remainder over the divisor. So as long as you know what the quotient is, which is right here, what the divisor is, which is right here, and what your remainder is, then you should be able to follow this pattern and write that for every division problem. Okay, scrolling down to the next type of division, which is called polynomial synthetic division. In this box, you can see I typed out the steps for you, so you can follow along there if you would like to. I'm going to jump down to the first example and explain it as I go. The only thing I want to point out is that when you are using synthetic division, you are in standard form dividing by the factor of x minus c, which means it is just a single linear factor. Okay, so you can read along with the directions above. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to explain as I go through, and hopefully you can follow along with all of the steps. So we still have the same starting format. This is still called your dividend, and you still have to check for all terms. So meaning you're still checking to see if it's in standard form. So we have an exponent of 4. We're missing an exponent of 3. 2, 1, 0. So we do have to alter this one a little bit. I'm just going to rewrite this directly below it as 2x to the 4th. Here's what's important, plus 0x cubed minus 5x squared plus 5x minus 2. So checking my exponents, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then no exponent. This, again, is called our dividend. And the second part, which is divided by x plus 2, this here is called our divisor. Now there's something a little bit different about synthetic division. You need to find your synthetic divisor. We're going to take this expression of x plus 2 and we're going to write it in standard form. So remember above I highlighted in green up here that standard form is x minus c. So down here, if this was standard form, it would have to be in the form of x minus c. That means I'm going to rewrite this expression as x minus negative 2. All right, that would give me x plus 2, but I am in my standard form of x minus. So knowing this, I can tell that my c value is equal to negative 2. That right there is super, super important. You have to find that value. You have to be able to find this value. This is called your synthetic divisor. And you definitely want to make sure you can find that. It shouldn't be hard. You could really just think about setting that factor equal to 0. If you set x plus 2 equal to 0 and you solve, you get negative 2. So, a couple ways to think about that, but in either case, you need to find that synthetic divisor. Okay, so for synthetic division, hopefully you remember this from Algebra 2, so it kind of comes back to you a little bit faster. You draw a box. You'll see I do it a few different ways, but something like this. And you identify the leading coefficient, or the coefficient, to be more specific, the coefficient of every term. So the coefficient of the first term is 2, coefficient of the second term is 0, negative 5, 5, negative 2. And you bring these values down to the top row of, I guess it's really just half of a drawn out box. So bring them down to the top row. 2, 0, negative 5, 5, negative 2. So these are directly from above. Then you take your synthetic divisor that we found over here. Your synthetic divisor is going to go outside. So top row, outside. All right, so follow with me carefully here. What you do is you start by bringing down the first term that's inside of this half drawn out thing I have going on, and you write it at the bottom, 2. So just carry that down. Now you take 2 and you multiply it by the synthetic divisor of -2. 2 times -2 is -4. You write it on the second row. So this is multiplying. Then you add what's inside. 0 plus -4 is -4. Then you multiply what's outside. -4 times -2 is +8. Then you add again. -5 plus 8 gives you 3. Multiply 3 times -2. 3 times -2 is -6. Add 5 plus -6 is -1. Multiply -2 times -1 is +2. And lastly, you add -2 plus 2 is 0. Now here you work backwards. This last number, whatever is your last number here, is going to be called your remainder. And then these are your coefficients. Starting with the constant term, I'm working backwards. I'm starting on the right side of the equation. So I have the remainder. Then I listed my constant. Next is going to be what I would call my linear term, but we're just going to label it as x. Next, we have our quadratic term, or our x squared term. Then we have our cubic term, or our x cubed term. I need to use these, but I also need to write these as my coefficients. So my final answer is 2x cubed. Notice how I just wrote that as the coefficient of x cubed. Minus 4x squared. -4 is the coefficient of x squared. Plus 3x minus 1, and then my remainder is obviously 0 in this case. This here is my final answer. Okay, so I think this takes a little bit more to explain than it does to actually do. Just remember when you get down to the end, you're working backwards. You start with the remainder, then you have your constant, x, x squared, x cubed. This would go to x to the 4th, x to the 5th, and so on. But make sure you include all of those values. Here is the same one, completely done out for you, with some extra direction there. All right, I'm going to do one more in the on your own section using synthetic division, just so I can show you what a remainder is going to look like. But then the rest of them, you can just go on to my website, find the note sheet, the completed note sheet, and check your answers on there. So let's do number 1 using synthetic division. Also, I guess I'll just back up for a second. There's no direction as to what type of division you want to use. Just remember that when you're using synthetic division, you really only want to use it when the form is x minus c. So here you could use synthetic division. Number 2, you could use synthetic division. I don't think I'd want to use synthetic division with number 3 because now you have a leading coefficient. That just gets messy. No one wants to deal with that. So probably long division for number 3. And number 4, synthetic division is doable. So synthetic division is when you have the most basic divisor, x plus or minus a number, and that's it. Anyways, back up to number 1. Check to make sure your dividend is in standard form, 4x cubed, 3x squared, x, and 8. We're good. Identify what your synthetic divisor is. In this case, it's going to be positive 3. Set up your synthetic division. 3 goes outside. Bring down all those coefficients. We have 4, 3, negative 1, 8. Bring down your value of 4. 4 times 3. 4 times 3 is 12. 3 plus 12 is 15. 15 times 3, 45. 45 plus 1, 45 minus 1, sorry, 44. 44 times 3 is 132. 8 plus 132 is 140. Remainder, constant, coefficient of x squared. Your remainder is going to be written the same way as I explained it above. So the same way as this right here. It's quotient plus remainder over divisor every time. So when I write this, my quotient is going to be 4x squared, that's this first term, plus 15x plus 44. And then I have my remainder of 140, and I write that over my original divisor of x minus 3. This is your final answer. And that's it. That is the only one I'm going to do in the On Your Own section. So just, if you want to see the rest of them, go on my website.